Greetings, everyone. I'm Eric Hansen, and on behalf of all of us here at Ott.X, I am delighted to welcome you to this episode of Ott.X's vidcast, The Buzz, where we offer up our online stage to a few prognosticating pontificators to lay their version of the truth on us about what's going on, what it means, and what we should do about it in the tumultuous world of OTT streaming. Before we turn things over to this episode's crew of Buzzketeers, I want to make sure to mention that you can find and subscribe to all episodes of The Buzz via podcast on Spotify. Just search for OTTX and be sure to follow us so you'll be notified about future episodes as well. We'll drop the link to that podcast on Spotify here in the chat in just a second. Also, there's always a lot going on in the OTTX sphere. For example, our popular members forum at NAB is taking place next week, and our flagship conference, the X Fronts, on May 21st and 22nd. I want to invite everyone to head out to OTTX.org to learn about these and our many other programs and activities. All right. Without further ado, presiding over today's group of OTT rabble-rousers, we're excited to welcome our moderator, a font of wisdom, wit, and at times, yes, even whimsy, David Bloom, senior contributor at Forbes, and panelists, Bryan Louzil, VP of Business Development at Mometu, Lacy Pack, Executive VP and Chief Technology Officer at iNDEMAND, Josh Pine, Chief Revenue Officer at XL8, and Mike Vorhaus, Chief Executive Officer at Vorhaus Advisors. Welcome, everybody.
Howdy.
Hello. Hello.
So, thank you, Eric.
Well, have fun and don't hold back, okay?
Oh, well, look, with this crowd, I don't think any holding back is going to happen, but thank you. I appreciate the encouragement like they need any. Let's start easy. Next week is NAB. OTT.X will be there, and I suspect many of you guys will be there. Curious, because NAB used to stand for the National Association of Broadcasters, and that feels like the smallest part of that show these days, though it's obviously their DNA. What are you guys going there for, or any expectations coming out of the show? Anything you expect to see or hear about? Anybody want to take that? Lacy, you want to tee us up?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick that one off. I mean, in some of these discussions, AI is AI is AI, and I expect every single vendor to have that somewhere in their booth. I think determining what it really means
are all over their booth, really, right?
It'll be everywhere. Every vendor, everyone's talking about it, right? So figuring out what that really means and how you latch on to something that's meaningful for your company is what is one of the big focuses for me. I think things around automatic break detections, making those things a little bit more seamless for us, since we play primarily in a video on demand world. Regardless of platform, having things that help the humans do their job a little bit more effectively and efficiently is that's what I intend to get out of it. And I know there's a lot more happening, especially in the things around like what Josh is doing and we're talking about as well.
Right. That's
yeah, and to your point,
you do it, Josh, but you need to do it. You need to do it in a foreign language, okay, and then automatically translate it live, right? Because otherwise,
that's exactly what we do. 70 language pairs, as a matter of fact. But to you're saying about going up to NAB and the B standing for broadcast, but really it's just morphed into broadcast is a catch-all word for how we view things and streaming and all that. It's just like you listen to the you watch a sporting event and a team wins the event and they talk to the players and they say, so how did you learn to deal with this other team? They say, oh, we went back, we watched the tape. Well, there is no tape anymore. They're not watching tape, they're rewatching something digitally recorded, but everybody still says tape. So broadcast is just to me with the show, just I don't even think of it as broadcast anymore. I think of it as a way to view the content however we're going to view it.
Yeah, I think they should rename it, though, the National Association of Video. Just be done with it. NAV and be done with it. But Mike, what do you?
So I'm not going this year, and that's after 6 years on my own, and 25 years with Maggot, TV station guys, and I'm not going to NAB. So I think that's definitely. I think I'm the canary. I think that's just the end of NAB. I'm not going. It's not relevant to anybody, even 60-year-olds who are in new media. I mean, it's basically become mean, I've been every year forever for, until including last year. It's basically become a light version of CES meets VidCon. Unless you want to go hang out with TV executives who don't even throw good parties anymore.
So that's the thing. Look, Mike, you remember when they had good parties. Like, I remember back in the day, the Western cable television show, in Anaheim, and they had some banging swag from like MTV, and they would have concerts from bands you wanted to watch and all kinds of.
Come on, let's talk about VSDA in Vegas.
Yes, there we go. There we go.
Right. I'm sorry. You did not say AVN, did you?
He did not.
Okay.
I said VSDA.
They were there purely for video software.
Oh, you're talking about the other side of it. Yeah. All right.
No,
exactly.
no, nobody went there for that. But that being said, these are tame affairs these days. I mean, you can go eat at Bolu Kitchens or something like that, really nice food, but otherwise, what's the point?
NAB, man, in the syndication world, the 80s and 90s, there was blah, 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 and there was blah, 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 and there was blah, blah, blah. You can't even talk about this stuff. It was Vegas at its skankiest.
That could be the title of your memoir, Vegas at its skankiest. I'm just saying.
I'd rather go with, East Hollywood.
Anyway, Bryan, are you guys going? What are you expecting?
No, staying away from NAB this year. Like Mike, we went the last 2 years, but yeah, decided to stay home for this time around and just hear back from everywhere that's going, like Lacy and Josh,
and watch Netflix. By the way, I bet we can go to NAB on like YouTube or something.
Probably, yeah. There's
probably some virtual panels there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, after the pandemic, all the conferences learned, hey, we should start streaming some of this stuff and capture whatever and do at least bump up our licensing fee to all the the vendors that are participating and stuff. So yeah, you can catch a lot of that stuff, but you won't have that in-person experience of trudging through the vast Las Vegas Convention Center, hoping to God you don't get lost. And
going over to the hotels where the vendors that don't want to pay for space on the floor,
right? The cheap ass vendors, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the interesting ones are startups coming up that are over there in some hotels, some cheap ass hotels.
But then there's also that all these different conferences, and there's tons of them now, and a lot of them have a lot of crossover, and they can't even plan timing right. I mean, NAB is going on at the same time as MIP TV and Con, and so if you want the content owners with the broadcasters, well, they're not there. They're in Con right now, and now next year they're moving it to London. But I mean, man, let's get the timing right.
Well, and I got to say, if I got a choice between Vegas and Cannes, no, that's a walkover. I mean, even London is like, nah, but I'd still want to go to Cannes, having been there last summer. I mean, it's like, that's definitely the more attractive proposition.
And then these things are very expensive, and you've got IBC, which is literally exactly the same thing as NAB, and you got to put your money more towards one or the other. It's a lot. It's almost too much.
Right, I get it, and that is a problem. I think they're probably reaching some critical mass here of everybody trying to milk the companies, and the companies are trying to really pay attention to their margins as we make this huge transition.
Well, that's what it was in the broadcast world. There were big dollars, and you would go to all these big things. Now with this squeeze with FAST and no more huge license fees, and everything's on rev share. The models are different. The economic models are different, and the ability to pay to go to all these things is way different than it used to be.
Yeah.
Who's going to Cannes Lion?
Anybody? That's not really this crowd, I don't think. It's more advertising.
I'm not going.
Yeah,
no, it is fun.
It is fun. Yeah, by all accounts, it's fun. You hear them roar over glasses of rosé and Provençal food.
By the way, Tubi and Pluto will be there in spades.
Right. Speaking of Tubi and Pluto, people that are actually making money in streaming, I found it very interesting. There was some stats in who was it? Bloomberg suggested that Tubi is now getting higher viewership, 1.7% of the view pie, more than Paramount Plus, Max, or Peacock. Now, Max surprised me somewhat, but I mean, that is kind of shocking. I'm curious what you guys make of that. Is it a combined impact of like the strikes and how that wiped out a lot of programming that would have been on these services? So you might as well just watch Tubi anyway. Is it just that free is free? and you can watch something, or is it just that when it's fast stuff and you're putting it on in the background, you don't have to pay attention while you're cooking or dealing with the kids or whatever? It's just a companion. His TV is companion, and that's why it's booming. I mean, to me, this is a really interesting shift. This acknowledgement of this role of television, of a slice of television, but also what it says about the subscale streamers is interesting too. Any thoughts, Bryan? You want to take that on to start?
Sure. I mean, with the logo behind me, you know, I'm all for free TV. So yeah, I'm all about seeing that people love free TV and they're tapping into the AVOD world. I think it's a mix of a lot of things though, because you touched on a few pieces, but I mean the demographics, right? I mean, you're looking at the lower middle and upper class, right? Like where are those class ranges actually watching from?
In household demographics, who's got the money to have 10 subscriptions? It's
exactly. I mean, the economical state right now, you know, things can dictate what people are able to afford and what are able to watch. You know, obviously as pricing goes up for subscriptions, people are only going to tap into those when they want to. You know, when there's a new show, they might tap in for a month and then get out and then go back to free streaming. So the ability to connect and disconnect with subscriptions and then get back into free streaming, it takes away kind of what the old cable model is of, you know, you're stuck for a year or 2 years paying for that service, right? You just need internet now, and then you can figure out what you want to do as far as streaming.
Yeah. Josh, what does this mean for all these less watched, expensive SVOD services, though?
Well, I think that the bigger ones, you know, they have their key shows just like you used to, you know, the tentpole shows that just like we used to watch on cable and even network TV that you know, have their followings and they're going to be watched no matter what. But you know, to have what, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 SVOD subscriptions that we've all talked about, you know, that's going by the wayside. It's pick your top 2 or 3, and if your favorite show's not on that, you're just not going to watch that one.
Right. So,
but you can cancel it too. I mean,
you
can just cancel it for a time being and get back in 6 months later. You know, it's.
But I do think that people are tired of doing that. I mean, it was exciting and fun to do that for a while, and you know, the burn and churn and go back. But you know, I think I think people want stability and to have a set and forget kind of a rhythm.
Well, see, that's interesting because that suggests that it's going to be tough if somebody doesn't pick your service to get them onto your service on an ongoing, sustained basis. So you've really got to string together must-watch stuff. Well, you're kind of going to be out on the ice floe, it feels like. We're going to have, this is the part of the consolidation challenge. Lacy, Mike and Lacy, I'd love to hear, you know, where we're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I work for a company that's a joint venture of Comcast, Charter, and Cox.
Yeah.
So the landscape has certainly shifted for that group. I still think there's opportunity, and I know we all have pushed away from the big companies that are doing the aggregation, but the companies that figure out how to do that aggregation in a very simple way, regardless of platform, and there are plenty that are already doing it fairly well right now. I think they're going to be the ones that last throughout these things of, I'm going to watch my show for 6 weeks, I'm going to binge it, and then I'm going to change platforms like Josh was talking about, like getting away from that model. There will be a few that I think will be successful that will be able to really model your programming regardless of what platform it actually lives on. You know, I've seen kind of an interesting discussion around that, talking about, I was on at a panel and I saw there was someone from, I'll throw it out there, they were from the WNBA, and then there was someone else from one of the kind of larger streaming platforms, and the streaming platform said, well, I want everybody to get to all their content from my app. And WNBA said, well, I shouldn't spend a lot of money on my app. What does that look like as far as who's going to cede what rights and what that's going to mean from a consumer perspective? I like to go one place. I'm a one place guy still, but I do bounce around in some cases, you know, and you get these Tubis where it's like free Walmart, right? I can walk down an aisle that I didn't, and I'll find 17 things that I didn't need.
Right.
But I'm in, and I'm in it, and I stay there.
All right. All right. So
the difference is you have to buy those items at Walmart and they're free. But by the way, let me make my point of view on this super clear. Tubi and Pluto are the single best media acquisitions other than Iger's big ones at Disney in 25 years.
But when we say big ones, does that include Fox? Because I'm not so sure the Fox deal.
Right, no, that's right. No, I was really thinking the traditional big ones did so well. Yeah,
Arts,
not Playdom and not Makers and
Penguin. Yeah, that's.
I mean, this is just, and we're still in the early stages of this. And they're still in the early stages of internationalizing, which Fox will do a lot of. And by the way, in both cases, the founders were remarkable gentlemen.
Yeah. They had good vision. And certainly Pluto.
And worked their butts off to get there.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Pluto is already in 70 countries or something like that, so it's already well out there. It's a much better business to my mind than Paramount Plus. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about should they just drop Paramount Plus and save them. They were losing still close to 1.7 billion on an annualized basis, 490 million last quarter on Paramount Plus. And I'm sort of curious. It feels like Pluto could go on forever and get bigger and bigger, but drop Paramount Plus. I mean, here's a crystal ball moment, Mike. Let's start with you. Who's going to own Paramount Global a year from now, or control Paramount Global a year from now?
I mean, look, the structure that goes so far back in National Amusements led to exactly what's going to be this situation, which is going to be lawyer
heaven.
Yeah, lawyer heaven. I
was
thinking of a word I wasn't going to use, because her interests diverge from the other shareholders' interests. You've got independent directors who are afraid of being sued. The value is probably, my sense is that any deal that might be concluded, the value will go lower than currently being talked about.
Oh yeah, because the whole value is up right now because of people hoping to cash in. And Warren Buffett's sitting around going, "Okay, my idiot assistants here said let's get Paramount on a cash out, and they don't cash out, or except for Sherry." Mario Gabelli is not going to be really excited about that. As you say, lawyer heaven, right? I mean, they're going to sue for a lot. And those independent board members, it's like, how independent are you? You just blew off 26 billion cash offer from Apollo saying, "Oh, we don't know where they're going to get the cash from."
Well, as an independent director of two public companies, I can tell you they will work their butt off to prove that they were independent.
Right.
Look, I think this thing either ends up being owned by, a newbie guy, and all of whom I kind of respect, all these guys, of the Pritzker, et cetera, Ellison, blah, 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 all these young people, gung-ho, because they get digital, and I don't think they're wedded to what I call the town car syndrome, as you've heard me say before, David.
Yes.
Where everybody has to have a town car and 2 assistants, and so I think they'll look, you fire half the people at Paramount tomorrow. I mean, that's any media company. So, and then 10 years from now, people are going to say whatever money they spent was a waste. I would only buy a media company, a traditional media company, content under one set of conditions today, which is I will pay them for 5 years, 50% of my EBITDA, up to a certain amount of money that we agreed on, or the end of the 5 years. And I give them $1 up front. Because none of us can predict the revenue and profit of any of these guys 2 years from now. We don't know how the knife is behaving.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point, because I'm really curious. As of Monday, the Reverse Morris Trust that shackled Warner Brothers Discovery from being able to make deals for the first 2 years of its existence ended. So now David Zasloff and Gunnar Wiedenfels can go out. I call them Zaz and Weeds. Get to go out and do deals, but I get the feeling that maybe they're not going to do that. They still got 40 billion in debt hanging over their head. Anybody expect any? I mean, it's like Hollywood as a whole is kind of, maybe buying more old assets doesn't make sense. Maybe we should figure out how to do some new ones.
I will jump in here because I have an extraordinary story. So I was at a friend's house with a mutual friend, older gentleman in the industry. And he said, and there were 20 people at the dinner, we didn't sign NDAs, and we weren't asked to. So he said, David Geffen tells me that this is going to be one of the great bounce backs, and it's an incredible buy. You've got to buy this. It was about a year ago. The value of content is being misunderstood. The stock was at $16 that day.
Right.
And I respect this other gentleman. I turned to my friend the other way. I said, do not buy a share of that stock. I ran through the reasons why. Trading at $8.36 today. And by the way, two ways it's a short. It's a short because it's just an old, cobbled together, expensive, traditional media company with confusion over the value of their underlying assets and some,
or even the name of the assets.
Yeah, or the name. Or it's a great short because as soon as Avlov announces an acquisition, the stock's going to go down another $2. The only thing that drives this stock is a deal that gets him to cut his debt in half.
Right. And what would that deal even look like?
Somebody buying him.
Yeah, exactly.
Which he won't do because he digs it. Follow him on Facebook. He loves Hollywood.
Oh yeah, he's got David. He's got Jack Warner's desk. He's got Bob Evans's house. All he needs is Louis B. Mayer's mistresses, and he's golden, man. I mean, anybody, Lacy, any thoughts on where this stuff goes?
Let's hear the pro Warner Brothers Discovery side.
There we go. Yeah, who's lining up for that one other than Zaz and Weeds and maybe John Malone? You work for the three C's basically, as you call them. I would call them Charter, Cox, and Comcast, who look like they're actually in the driver's seat again, right? So, speaking of Paramount, they've still got. They're talking about buying Paramount without knowing what's going to happen with the cable deals with Charter and Comcast, which are both up for negotiation. Like in coming weeks, or one of them is coming weeks and one is the other end of the year. I mean, why would you do a deal when anything you do is going to look like the Disney deal, right? I mean, I'm just sort of curious what you're thinking about all that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I think the way you mentioned the Disney deal, the way that was handled, and the pros and cons that came out of that, and I'll stick to the pros of it. It did kind of change the model. It kind of flipped the model on its head, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that as you look further down the line, and you mentioned these deals that are up with two of the owner groups, that I can't imagine it going any other way.
Right. That's the template, right? That's it.
And it's kind of we've seen it. We know what the future looks like. So now, what does that mean for the deals like you're talking about with Paramount? Like how does that influence? And maybe there's I don't know. Maybe there's something that's known in there that someone will make a decision that's a good idea to go after. I think the only thing that I could say, or I'll go back to the points that were made a little bit earlier, is that unless you're finding some way to boost your bottom line by doing this thing and then evacuating half the company, and somehow that will boost your bottom line, then I can certainly see that. But I don't know of any other reason why you would go for it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of hard to see how this boosts the bottom line. Josh and Bryan, any thoughts about further deal making, whether it's Warner Brothers Discovery or what happens with Paramount, or what Hollywood looks like in the next 6 to 12 months?
That's like putting a big crystal ball and opening a can of genie.
I'm going to use some AI to create a crystal ball of you looking at it.
Right?
Yeah. So what are you thinking? What's how are you guys navigating? Because you're trying to figure out who you're doing deals with, and everything's shifted. How are you guys navigating? Both of you guys. I'm sorry, both you and Bryan. I'm really curious as operators in this very fluid time, I would say. How does that affect how you all think about where your business goes and how you shape yourselves?
First of all, I'm just gonna say with Comcast, I think, with Warner Brothers, it's just way too early. I don't think there's. I mean, you could crystal ball that all you want, but it's just way too early there's not enough information, at least in my mind, yet, right? I mean, that's going to come soon. As far as Paramount, I mean, I think it just depends if they're going to want to sell it in pieces or if they're going to sell it as a whole.
She keeps talking selling the whole thing, and everybody else is like, no, you're going to sell it in pieces.
Yeah.
Or buy from you and sell it in pieces. I mean, if Apollo gets to hang around and scoop it up when things don't work out, or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
I
as
don't
far
know.
as as far as we go, I mean, I think us just continue to focus on content that makes sense for the users that we have and the users that we're focusing on. I think that's what most platforms should focus on. But I mean, I think everyone's trying to just be the next biggest thing, and I think if you focus on what you're good at, you'll succeed in where you are, and it'll play out for you. But um, unfortunately, I think as we're talking about, some larger, cable-based companies, right? And originally, at least or broadcast, right? For what I know them as when I was growing up, and I think as Mike kind of mentioned there, it's things are phasing out, and the younger entities are moving in to understand the digital world. So, I mean, both of them, I think will get picked up, but I don't think they're going to go bankrupt. I think someone's going to pick them up and figure out a way, but I think it's just too early to say who.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in the studios, they kind of talk out of, I don't want to speak badly, but they kind of talk out of two sides of their mouth when it comes to AI. On one side, they're blasting AI and the writers, and it's going to kill production, and
Right.
and all this stuff. Right. On the other side, they're telling their lieutenants, the executives are all telling their lieutenants, go to all these AI companies and start talking to them and figuring out how we can save millions of dollars using their technology.
Yep.
And do it so that nobody else finds out. Well, everybody's finding out because we all know they're all talking to us.
Right.
And they're also realizing that they've got massive catalogs of content going back years, some of which, each studio probably has a couple thousand or more titles that have never been monetized past VHS or DVD. And they've got to figure all that out and what that does to their valuations if they can monetize it now, utilizing AI and other things that create a more efficient and cost-effective workflow. How does that change the valuation? Can they bring back some of this content? Can they make some money out of it, or is it just dead and you write it off and move on? But from what we're seeing in part of where a lot of the work and effort we go that we go into building out our products are to help the language service providers create a product for the studios that allow them to take a lot of this old content that otherwise could never have been localized and sold globally at a reasonable rate,
Right.
And now do it such that they can actually monetize it when they never used to be able to do that.
So
and that will change
that's a utility use case for AI that has great value.
But it could change the value of the studio, right? In a world where a studio might have had thousands of titles that they just wrote off their books and were never going to touch again, that now they can take and say, well, this might be worth $500 million if we can actually utilize new efficiencies in the distribution process. That becomes a game changer.
Now, I know that OpenAI has been talking to all the studios and many other companies out there, some that are sort of surprising, that are doing companies, not yours or your sector necessarily, but lots of companies. And it feels like because they want to tap into some of all that vast amount of IP and cultural weight and stuff like that to help train their systems and all that. That also feels like this is going to be a little bit like Disney selling things to Netflix in 2015. So Netflix all of a sudden had a business of original programming. I mean, it's like selling nuclear weapons to the villagers a little bit. Mike, any thoughts on Hollywood doing deals with the Sora creators of the world, and what that is that going to be another disaster for the value of Hollywood by basically empowering its successor?
I really hate to be this way.
No, you don't.
No, I do, because look, I came into Magid, in 1994, and so many great things were going on in traditional big media at the time. And you look back now and you look at somebody like Tony Ritter at Knight Ritter, selling all those newspapers at probably the height of their EBITDA and the height of the premium on the EBITDA. And you just time after time after time after time after time again, and the list is just ponderous. Jerry Levin, and we haven't talked about in a long time. I mean, just, Zaslav, who I think is the ultimate representation of traditional media.
Right.
So, and I'm 66. I still go downstairs and turn on my TV and turn on my list on my direct TV and watch the evening news, partly because I need to know what drugs I should be taking.
Yeah, that's really to see what's in the supermarket, basically.
Well, I have 10 feet away from me in my bathroom the New York Times and the LA Times from today and yesterday. And, so, I'm an old media guy, but almost none of these guys have anything approaching an open mind. Even the guys who are the smartest and the most analytical, and some of you know a client I'm talking about very closely, still, relative to the degree of open-mindedness they need, is minuscule. I mean, and so the tech guys, in one way or another, spend more and more time in entertainment and content. They're not going to buy these libraries at the prices people think they're going to buy. I mean, the whole thing is this is going to be a low margin. The whole fun is going out of the entertainment industry, except for the creativity. And that creativity and that content can go everywhere, and you don't need any of the initials.
Right. You don't need any of the initials. That's a really interesting way to put it. Speaking of initials, though, that still matter, this last weekend, March Madness, both men's and women's, the women's games hit it out of the park. I believe the championship game was the most watched basketball game ever. Men's or women's. It's like 18 million viewers or something like that. It outstripped many World Series games, etc., many NBA playoff games and finals games. Kind of remarkable. First of all, is the WNBA going to rock it now that they're going to get a bunch of stars like Caitlin Clark coming right in? I think the draft is next week. Is this going to make the WNBA a must-watch all of a sudden? Or are we seeing a kind of a really important transition moment? And, Lacy, you mentioned the WNBA person. I'm curious, what is a league like that that's on the come finally? It's been 25 years, a 25-year overnight sensation. What do they do? How do they maximize it in this interesting, weird time?
Yeah, they should certainly draft this thing that they have going, right? I mean, they need to pull in right behind it and keep running. I hope so. And I think it was brought about by there was some really brilliant marketing around, especially around the rivalry that was established last year between LSU and Iowa, and they really focused on showing the ring and all that. You saw that everywhere. It didn't matter where you were, you saw that, and it just brought that rivalry game. And then I think the history of Caitlin Clark as a player, right, what she's done for the game, and I think they really did a great job of capitalizing on it. It's now how you take that excitement and drive it through a full season. And at least during the playoffs, how you stoke those fires of the rivalries. And I don't personally, as a sports fan, obviously we do a lot of sports stuff. I would love to see
him finish that sentence, because it looks like he froze up.
A true rivalry, right? They're it's not Celtics Lakers anymore by any shape of the imagination. It's whoever can pay the most to have the best players on their team. So I think there's a lot that can still be done there, though.
There's one word for this phenomenon, and anybody who's done traditional TV for years, like Maggot, celebrities. It's just that simple. The athletes are celebrities. They're showing their backstories. They're doing good TV with one of their last remaining capabilities, and the coaches are celebrities.
Right, Kim Mulkey and her outfits are
and Dawn
He's
Staley,
the bad guy. Yeah,
and Dawn Staley,
awesome.
And there's a third one. I bet you anything they're on a View type show on ESPN next year.
That would be fun. Gino Auriemma at UConn has won 11 titles. Tara Vanderveer, the Stanford coach, who has won more games than anybody in college basketball, men's or women's, just announced her retirement. But she could do it. She's got time on her hands now. But Dawn Staley's doing those commercials with Coach K for Aflac, I think, and a couple other things. I mean, she's got some presence, and she's definitely a tough broad, man. I love what she does, and has turned South Carolina into a powerhouse. and Mulkey is really happy being a villain, I think. And you kind of need your heel, right? Wrestling has shown us you need to have your heel, so you could totally and she'd have a heel and high heels. Just to push it. Josh,
you're right. If it becomes this celebrity-driven thing, then you bring in new audiences. My wife wouldn't have watched a basketball game to save her life before, but now, if it's on one of the celebrity, Entertainment Tonight or whatever, and she's saying, "Hey, I want to take a look at that."
Yeah, mine too. She never watched sports, and we've been only together 7 years. But around me, she's had to watch more sports, but she's like putting up with it. But like she even said with the women's championship games that are leading into the Final Four, she says, "How do I bet on these games?" And like, what?
DraftKings.
Right.
There you go.
I think you can do it, but I'm not sure because I'm not a gambler, right? But it was like, who are you and what did you do with my spouse? It was really crazy.
Have Andrea call me. I'll help her set up her account at DraftKings.
She'll be all over it, but only for women's basketball and probably, I don't know, maybe she'll.
Well, there'll be women's golf gambling and.
Oh yeah, right.
Wait, where are salaries going?
Tennis.
Women's basketball salaries
going up, and NIL deals in college for those athletes. Yeah. But tennis has been big with Serena. Serena arguably far bigger than any men's star over the 20 years. 20 years of her core of her career. And certainly even with Federer and Djokovic and all that. Bryan, I'm sort of curious, what do you think the WNBA should do to take advantage of this moment of interest? Where do they go? Should they be on Mometu?
Should they be on Mometu? I don't know. We're not really sports focused, but we could be, maybe. If they come to us, we'll
it's an open court, as it were. So.
I'm sure Otero would be ecstatic if they approached us about that. But as far as the WNBA goes, Lacy definitely mentioned something that was in my mind, that they just need to ride this wave right now and see where it kind of takes them. And kind of put everything into that. But it is kind of the year of the girl dad, right? You had with the NFL, with the whole Taylor Swift thing and how many eyeballs that brought it from a standpoint of a demographic that wasn't watching the NFL and now is, just because they're excited to see Taylor Swift or Kelsey or whatever it is, or now they're just happy to do something with dad, right? Now you have, with March Madness, look, women's basketball, it's not my thing, but like, I will say it was exciting to watch. And I think it's about what you're able to have in front of you. The broadcasters, streamers, they made an effort to put the product in front of us. It wasn't in bad times, time slots, not on the worst days. We saw that final on a Sunday, late afternoon, when people are watching sports. It wasn't at like 12 o'clock, while people are still getting out of church on the West Coast.
It wasn't tucked in before the bicycle rides,
Exactly. It was front and center.
Cycling.
It was advertised. Caitlin Clark right now, she is the Steph Curry of 10 years ago, right? She's changing that game and bringing a lot of recognition to it. I think it's awesome, but I think, I hate to say that it's too early again, but it kind of is, just because March Madness and really any playoff setup for any sport is exciting. It brings a lot more advertisers. It brings a lot more people. You get the better time slots, right? So we'll see how it goes. I hope it does well for them, though. The WNBA, for most of my friends, is kind of a joke, right? Like, it's not exciting. I think the Brittany Griner thing brought exciting news to it, but that's not the kind of news we want. We want positive.
No, being imprisoned in Russia.
No, exactly, right. I think we talked about that stuff on the last Buzz I was on with you, and we talked about that. But I think that having a positive, uplifting message right now for women's basketball is exciting. I think it's what women's soccer had for a while now, and that is growing like crazy. The She Believes Cup yesterday going on with USA and Canada. So give it a prime spot, see if it does well, and then go from there.
This is an interesting time, because I think the NBA negotiations to renew their contracts with a variety of outlets online, and both the streaming services and the more traditional ones, just sort of formally open. And there's a lot of conversation about will Amazon or Apple or Netflix buy in on the NBA next time around? Can Warner Brothers Discovery afford to pay what it was paying? One estimate, I think it was, I want to say the guys over at Lightshed estimated that the costs might triple for Warner Brothers, the TNT deal that they have. And Netflix might be interested not in the whole regular season, but maybe the play-in tournament that's about to start for the playoffs, or that new regular season tournament they had early in the year that the Lakers actually won. So it's like a little slice of the NBA as Netflix continues to get its feet wet in this live sports stuff. Any thoughts about what's going to happen to that? We know the NFL owns everything. Basically, it's the only remaining sport that anybody watches at scale, super scale. But the NBA might be second because it travels globally, right? They're in like 140 countries. They own the NBA African League. They own the WNBA. Will the NBA? We're going to see digital guys in there now, and can Warner Brothers keep up if Comcast, for instance, jumps in? Any thoughts, Lacy?
Yeah, I think obviously the playing field in sports has just been so bifurcated, and God, who knows where it's going to go. But I think that I do see where there could be a player like an Amazon or an Apple kind of jumping in. I don't know if they'll jump in the wholehearted way that, as an example, Apple went with MLS. Right. I think that the pieces that you carved out, the play-in tournaments, things like that would be a natural fit. And then looking at just digital distribution rights versus traditional rights and things like that. I know we kind of, I don't know if I use the word bash, but talking about the NAB and the broadcasters, like if you look at some of the hockey teams this year alone, they went back to the local broadcasters themselves and said,
as the RSNs fell apart. Yeah, the RSNs fell apart, or Dynamo is going away, and maybe it's not going away now. Right?
And then I'm going to get a digital partner that, for those that don't want to watch it on traditional television, I'll have that digital partner. So it can go so many ways right now. And but I do think there'll definitely be a play in there for someone along those lines.
Okay, so we'll see some digital folks. Any thoughts, Josh, on your part about like how this plays out?
Well, we're talking about the ability to watch it via other methods, streaming and otherwise. One of the things that the technology has allowed is you can now much more cost effectively and efficiently stream some of these games going on in Europe and other territories and bring them here, live translate on the fly, like our company does. But going through VoIP or broadcast over internet protocol instead of voice VoIP, which we're all familiar with for telephone, and produce that stream and that subtitle, the caption, and the translation, super cheaply compared to if it's going out on broadcast in other territories, and you couldn't do that before. So you can now take lesser tier sports or sports leagues that aren't as huge as an NFL, that would not have been profitable to stream into other territories. You can now do a relatively professional job at greatly reduced costs, and that could help find a home for some of this content to grow and then make its way to a more traditional broadcast.
Well, that's an interesting point. Certainly, with the NBA's reach being what it is, it would be nice, for instance, if you could have that one cast, whatever you want to put in front of the word cast, travel to Europe and Asia and Africa.
So I can't talk too much about it because we're doing some work there, but the NBA has an app, and I think I can't speak for the NBA, but I think one of the ideas with a lot of these sports leagues is to take that app and be able to live stream content if it's not the premier stuff that's going on with the actual league itself, but perhaps secondary content that relates to that audience and live stream it through the app. And it could be WNBA, it could be women's basketball in other countries. It could be
it's all the
things
developmental leagues. Yeah, everything. Developmental leagues.
Yeah, and
all those are out there.
and they could drive all that through the app and translate it on the subtitle and translate it on the fly and do it very inexpensively.
Yeah. Mike, any thoughts on who gets to play with the NBA after this contract? I think it runs out for after next season, after 25.
I'm going to make a much broader 2 points, and one I'm making for impact only, and the question of God, is there any truth in there? And you guys have referred to this. All these sports content producers, leagues, teams, there's no reason for them not to own their own content.
Right.
We got this little thing called the internet. We got this little thing called broadband and 5G. There's just literally, in a purely fresh analysis, there is zero reason, unless you believe that they lack an ability to get out to consumers and tell them where they are. That used to be the claim of the network. So I do, and I've said for a long time, and it's gone a little bit well with a couple of them, but I just think ultimately they're going to not need an ESPN in that way. To make my second point, which I'm more making as a punctuation mark, here's my headline: NFL buys ESPN.
It's going to buy part of it. I think it's almost certain that they're going to have a significant share of that. And when they spin that out, they'll be a partner, not just
yeah, that's going to be the right.
So they'll buy 30% and let Jimmy Pitaro run everything because Jimmy's still great.
Oh, are we going to talk about who's going to succeed Iger?
That's going to be our lightning round, but thank you.
Oh, great. I'm so excited about this.
Thank you. Yes. So
I did see a question in the chat about AI. Do we want to go there or do that at the end?
We'll do that at the end.
You're mucking up David's flow.
Yeah, mucking up my flow, man. I'm
like just a question.
I'm just surfing this stuff here. We'll get AI. AI's everywhere, as you know. You're helping make it worse, Josh.
It was a good question. I just want to answer it when the time is right.
All right, when the time is right. So NBA, but NFL, we do want to talk about. We'll go to the lightning round. What the heck? My flow is all busted. I gotta get rolling again. Find that way. Now that Mike's kicked me off. Lightning round. Who's going to succeed Bob Iger as Disney CEO? Bryan.
So the LA Times had an excellent article. I'm sure you saw it, David, reviewing the 5 or 6 internal candidates.
I think there's only 4.
So we've got, just so we can get our list here: Pitaro, Bergman, and Walden.
Yeah.
Who's the Parks guy?
Josh D'Amaro.
And who is the official?
Who's responsible for 40% of the company's profits?
Yeah, I know.
He's a $60 billion investment.
And who's I'm missing one.
No, those are the 4.
Okay, Pitaro, can't possibly believe it. I couldn't believe it when they made him president of Dig. Just not for any particular reason. I don't even know the guy, but just like a run-of-the-mill Yahoo VP. That's who you picked to run Dig, and he's done a good job. But is it inspiring in any way? He's kind of comes across to many of us in the world as an empty suit. By the way, that's how Iger looked to many of us. So
he was a weatherman. Iger was a weatherman, for God's sake.
Maybe Pitaro's Iger too.
Yeah, but he's also 73. He's older than Iger.
All the traditional Hollywood guys say Bergman. It's a studio. You can only have a studio guy running a studio. If they're going to go that direction, they're going to go with Walden. And I think they're going to break the company up. And I think you go for now with the Parks guy. Or some interesting outsider, like probably not Jason Kilar, but like a name like that.
Well, here's one that I've thought would be great is the head of Mattel, Ynon Kreiz, because here's a guy who sold Maker to Disney, so he knows Disney a little bit. He ran Sony Digital and animation, so he knows animation and the digital side of movie making very well. He oversaw a gigantically successful translation of a consumer product, Barbie, into a hugely popular, the most popular movie of the year. I mean, he's kind of got more of this stuff going on than all the rest of those very talented executives. But Iger loves Dana Walden, and talent likes Dana Walden. But you're right, that's a very old conception of what Disney chief should be, because she's got no experience in parks. Again, 40% of the profits, and the biggest driver of those these days, now that ESPN's not what it was. So it's really kind of interesting. Any thoughts, Bryan? What do you think?
If I had to pick quick choice, I'd go Bergman.
Go Bergman. Okay.
I would. I like Dana, but I think Bergman would be the right choice. I think keep Dana where, she's being very successful. Keep the parks, keep Josh where he's doing the parks. I think you need to keep your pillars where the success is and keep that riding. So I think Bergman's the right choice if they go with one of these four candidates.
It seems like that's that's the sort of latest little breadcrumbs coming out of that, but it's only internal candidates, which I feel like probably a mistake.
Their board should be sued if they've made that determination.
But the board should have been sued for years for incompetence. I mean, this board has not really brought it for how long?
Get him, Mike. Get him, Mike.
15 years? How long has it been since? I mean, they haven't gotten it right on much of anything for a long time.
It's 16 members. It used to be 18.
Right. Well, it hasn't gotten better by the concentration of thought. No, I actually thought it was good that they brought in the Morgan Stanley. He's still the chairman, James Gorman. But here's a guy who did preside over a really good succession, his own at Morgan Stanley, and everybody thinks no, he hit it out of the park. And that was all internal candidates, and they had a bake off. And it's important to note that the folks who lost out in that didn't leave. They were able to keep that talent in-house when they found a new successor among the insiders. So I thought that was an interesting choice of a new board member. Any thoughts on your end, Josh, about who's going to be running Disney in 2030 when Iger finally retires?
I don't want to break your flow, man. I really don't have an opinion one way or another on it. I haven't been following it with as much depth as I think everybody else on here has been focused elsewhere on the industry.
So how about this, Josh? Do you predict that AI will run Disney?
AI will not run Disney. I think as good as AI is helping things in the industry, it will always, at least in our lifetimes, need a human hand in polishing up whatever it does, in assisting what we do. Anybody who thinks that AI is just going to take over people's jobs and all this, they'll take over some jobs, but not everything, or it will morph a job into another type of a way of doing things, and you have to adapt to that. But AI is not going to run any company, and it's not going to take over everything we do.
Yeah. So Henry Wong asked though about legality issues.
Yeah. So Henry, that's a really good question, and to address it, AI is like a big catch-all phrase, right? And in AI in the right hands is really terrific, and AI in the wrong hands is really bad. But that's the same with every technology we've ever had, from the beginning of time, and then even going into the internet. But AI is a big, broad animal and a big, broad beast. You have massive open architecture AI models, large language models like ChatGPT and OpenAI and all that kind of stuff, which when you're using it to write things, presents perhaps legal issues and rights issues and IP issues. But then there's also specialty AI, like our company, like XL8, that specializes in very particular things like machine translation and localization, AI media localization and AI media workflows, that we're really not touching anything having to do with the IP or anything legal. We're not creating anything. We are helping the people who translate these movies, who the language service providers. We're helping them with the studios, with the content owners, and the FAST platforms and the other platforms to localize content and utilize AI to help do that in a very closed loop environment. And we take that legality very seriously. We go through things like a SOC 2 testing where we are certified in security. We are also TPN Gold certified by TPN to make sure that our content is in a closed loop that never touches any of the outside environments that could perhaps put it in hands where illegal activities could happen. So you have to.
But you're saying that something like what you guys are doing actually could open the door for things like live sports internationally with that
Absolutely.
quick on-the-fly translation and create a new business opportunity. And that does
Correct.
that kind of thing. All right, so lightning round 2, favorite streaming show lately. Lacy.
Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air on Apple TV Plus. World War II, the bloody 100th bomber wing got shot to hell trying to drop bombs on Germany.
As a former military guy, spectacular.
Okay. Bryan, favorite streaming show of recent times?
Recently, finishing up The Gentleman. Really enjoying that one.
I was just going to say that was mine too.
If you ask me in the morning, though, David. Yeah, Guy Ritchie. I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie. But yeah, if you ask me first thing in the morning, though, David, I'm watching a lot of Blippi. Blippi's my guy right now.
Oh, being a father of a young child, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah. So, but The Gentleman, Guy Ritchie, big English estate. Mokes with British mokes with menace in their eyes, and overly entitled landed gentry colliding in
and drugs.
And drugs.
Yes. A lot of drugs.
All right. And Mike, what are you watching these days?
So best in 23 was Borgen, female prime minister in Denmark, amazing actress. Husband is the supporting role, has to give up his career, entrepreneur. The kids have all the kid angst problems. And because Denmark's so small, the entire government operates out of this one building, Borgenswassen Hall, and they call it Borgen. It's just amazing, a million times better than West Wing, and I loved West Wing. But
better than House of Cards, because that's what it often gets.
It's different. House of Cards was so much more, over the line on violence and
much darker,
and how nasty shit really can be in DC. But in the last month, the third new season of Young Royals, creating a hell of a buzz amongst those of us who are gay, those of us that love a good love story, those of us that are curious about how the right and the left can live together, love together. Young Royals, I binged it. You don't have to be gay. Watch it.
And that's on who? Which service?
Netflix. Because I rarely go on my other services because I can never remember my passwords.
Yeah, you might want to make those accessible, right? But I totally get it. Just trying to get my streaming services on my Apple Vision Pro just to watch them has been a pain because like Netflix doesn't have an app, a dedicated app, so you can watch it through a browser. That's fine, but it has its limits. Spectrum, by the way, is terrible. I'd like to be able to watch my sports on my Apple Vision Pro, but all I get is the audio feed when I try to watch like a basketball game.
You're back to radio, David.
I'm back to radio, and some of that's okay. If it's just like a regular season game, I don't care about it that much. I just want to play in the background while I'm, using Adobe's Firefly to create pictures of Bryan looking at a crystal ball, for instance, in psychedelic colors in a steampunk spaceship, as you do. All right, so what's my favorite lately? I watched so many different things. My spouse really got into the new look, and I quite enjoyed that. It was very interesting to look at, also on Apple TV Plus, which is having some, it's arguably taken the place of HBO in consistently doing some pretty high-end, high-quality stuff. And they don't have a deep bench, but they got a murderer's row of content from Lacy's pick to Josh and Bryan's pick. I mean, it's really interesting to me how they've kind of picked it up. I still think that they should just frickin' buy Paramount, or at least Paramount's library. When Paramount kills off Paramount Plus, buy Paramount's library and be done with it.
Sherry should pay someone to buy it. Hey, I have a call. I gotta go.
You gotta go. All right. So
I'm gonna bring some semblance of calmness back to the maelstrom of havoc you've been wreaking all over the OTTX stage here. Honestly, you're just a bunch of subversive bird flippers, aren't you?
No.
Take it to the man and the woman too while you're at it. No, it's awesome. We appreciate it.
No, just to the artificial men and women.
Right. No, I love Mike's quote. I'm sorry Mike had to bail. All the fun is going out of entertainment. out of the entertainment business except the creativity, which is going wherever the bleep it wants. That's fantastic. Preach on, Mike. I really enjoyed the conversation. We can probably just keep going, and everyone else can. Well, we're going to need our Zoom back here, so you can join together later. But thanks so much. That was a lot of fun. Y'all are terrific. So yes, David, Bryan, Lacy, Josh, Michael, thanks for taking us on that insightful, invigorating deep dive down the rabbit hole, over the top, and with only a couple of exceptions, without careening off the rails. We'll be back again with our next edition of The Buzz on May 8th.
Eric, if we didn't careen off the rails, you wouldn't want us back.
No, you're right. That's why you're here.
The rail careening is part of the joy.
No, it is, and that's part of exactly. Y'all are great. Yeah, so you can register for our next episode of The Buzz on May 8th. Head out to OTTX.org to do that, and check out the rest of our podcasts on Spotify. You can just search for OTTX.org. We're proud to offer these sessions free to the OTT industry on behalf of our OTTX membership. If you're not yet a member, well, then you should be. So I want to invite you to head out to the site and look into becoming one. There are a bunch of conferences out there, but I think everyone on this call is going to agree the one you should be going to is the OTTX X-Fronts on May 21st and 22nd. So if you're in Cannes or anyplace else, head on back early, hang out with us in Los Angeles. It's going to be a great show. All right, everybody, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you all in a month or so.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.